It's now 17 minutes after 7. This is Morning Express. Today's Tuesday, so it's time for us to look at the political point. And this morning, I'm joined by Murigi Kamande, who is to my immediate left. And Murigi Kamande is an advocate. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm also joined by Dr. Alutalala Mohana, and thank you for joining us. He's a lawyer, and thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Now, one of the things that has been on the conversation of many Kenyans and would like to get a fuller understanding is the question of secession. What does that actually mean? Last week, we looked at a few examples of countries that have actually gone that way. Some have managed to succeed in their bid, others not very successful. However, this is a conversation that is being had in Kenya. We do know that right now the bill is ready, one that is being tabled by Honorable Peter Kaluma, and it is one to do with secession. So let's first of all look at a compilation of a story that was done by Chris Thyro before we find out from our guests what that means and whether this is a conversation that Kenya is ready to have or it is putting the cart before the horse. Let's listen into, first of all, this story by Chris Thyro.
When Parliament resumes its sessions from the 3-week recess, top on the agenda will be to debate and either adopt or reject a bill that seeks to allow 40 counties out of 47 to secede and form a People's Republic of Kenya. The bill, which is now ready for debate and sponsored by Homa Bay Town MP Peter Kaluma, names a total of 40 counties that should be excluded from the People's Republic of Kenya, leaving only 7 counties, namely Kiambu, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Embu, Tharaka Nithi, Nyandarua, and Laikipia counties to be part of the original Kenya. According to the draft bill, the main reasons for seceding is what they term as marginalization by the current regime, interference and arm twisting of independent commissions, including the IEBC, Judiciary, the National Police Service, as well as Parliament, manipulation of voters and rigging of elections, as well as suppression of other communities and groups to retain political and economic power. Given that the bill has full support of the NASA leadership and that the bill will be debated in Parliament where Jubilee enjoys majority of members, the debate will boil down to a Jubilee NASA contest. This is not the first time that the debate on seceding is being advocated by a section of Kenyans. First, it was the Mombasa Republican Council that wanted the coast region to secede from the rest of Kenya. However, their efforts did not see the light of day as they were branded as rebels and fought by the national government. Sources within NASA intimate to KTN News that soon they plan to form a secretariat to collect the 1 million signatures required by law to support their move, one that they had initially tried but flopped in 2015 through the Okoa Kenya initiative.
All right, so that's basically where we are as a country, and there are those who are pushing for that. Now, gentlemen, let me start with you, Murigi, and I believe you've had a look at the Kaluma bill.
Yes.
And first of all, your comments, your opening remarks on secession
Yes.
as a subject that we should be having as a country based on that bill.
Thank you very much for hosting me this morning. In my opinion, I believe that Kaluma and company are heading in the wrong direction. Even if Kenya has issues, I do not think that secession should be one of the agenda that we should be pursuing right now as a country.
Why not?
Kenya has moved far. Kenya has been a territory that has been recognized internationally, even before, I would say, before colonization. And for us as a country, for the years that we've had independence since 1963, is that even if we have had issues, what we need to focus on is how we can resolve them internally. We do not have to feel that certain areas are marginalized, and we do not have to get to a point that Kenya has to break up.
But
so
isn't it a fact that there are areas that possibly have been marginalized over the years? I mean, we are now 55 years.
You see, the problem, what we run away from, is that we do not recognize Kenyans as a people. Kenyans have interacted so much that you cannot even distinguish. Whatever that you have right now that have been created, for example, in terms of the counties that want to secede, you cannot say that they are distinct areas with distinct people. Kenyans have intermarried. There are people who've moved and know that certain areas are their homes for all that period of time. But the problem in this country that we've had is not the typical marginalization of areas. It is the political marginalization because of the politicians that we have in place. So therefore, if you want to tell us that there are certain areas that are marginalized, some of those people do not even live in those areas that you want to seek to secede, then I believe it is a dishonest discourse that we are having right now. There are people who are trying to solve a political secession, a political agenda, a political problem by taking hardline position that unless it is either our way or the highway, it's either you do things the way we want them done, or we no longer have.
But
Kenya
isn't that the nature of politics, that sometimes you have to put your back to the wall and say that this is the way we are going to go, given that we have tried other avenues and possibly they have not worked?
I don't believe we've tried all the avenues. They haven't worked.
Okay.
And I've repeated this, that Kenya is in the right direction. The only problem and the only time Kenyans, you'll always hear Kenyans are having issues is whenever we come to general elections. If we manage to move as a country and we already have a constitution in place like the Constitution of Kenya of 2010, and if you look at the way we've been strengthening institutions, so therefore as a country we're moving in the right direction. So let nobody try to hoodwink us that the only reason that the only way we can solve the current political stalemate that we have is secession. It is not.
Dr. Mohana, do you agree that maybe this is a conversation that is premature, despite the fact that we all admit we have issues, we have problems in the country? However, this would be a drastic measure to take at this point in time.
Michael, thank you very much for having me. You know, Michael, we may never agree, but we must never fail to listen. It is not right to rubbish what other citizens are saying. Listen to them. Look at the merits. Look at the historiography. Where have these lamentations originated? The biggest challenge that we have in this country, Michael, and it's not just today, it has been with us, is that we are very, very good at forgetting. And then we push everything beneath the carpet and hope that that remains under the carpet, and we say, let us move on. The motion by Kaluma, Honorable Kaluma, in my view, is regrettable. It is not regrettable because it's not right. It's regrettable because of the ramifications that that is bound to have on this republic. I will not dwell, if you allow me, into the depths of that motion because I've not had the time to interrogate it fully. But this motion must be seen in the context of what has been bedeviling the nation for some time now. You know, Michael, we keep discussing the affairs of today as if they're in isolation.
And as if they just occurred out of the blues today.
You've put it so right.
They have a history.
They have a history. To the point that we now have secession. Remember, they began as quiet murmurs from unofficial sources. Now it appears even the Honorable Raila is actually the one now talking about it through his people. Because Honorable Kaluma is presenting a motion. That's a NASA MP. Why has it reached a point where some sections of Kenyans now feel that they do not want to be part of this republic? In my view, the answers are in our history. Most recently, the problem we have now, as NASA has put it, is electoral injustice. Why haven't we listened to them? Michael, we have spent a lot of time here discussing about whether what the Supreme Court ordered was complied with or it was not complied with. A lot was pushed under the carpet. New electoral laws have been brought in place, effectively negating the progress that we made in electoral laws. And now where we are is that NASA has stepped it further. We are again here saying it is wrong to be asking for secession. NASA will move it further. The fact that they're taking to Parliament, don't even be cheated. Don't even spend time discussing whether it will succeed in Parliament or not. Of course it will not, because of the sheer numbers of the Jubilee administration. But does NASA know? They know. What they are trying to do is to try as much as possible and expose their opponents as being illegitimate, insensitive, and out to wreck everything as long as it doesn't go their way. The Constitution can be amended either through the popular initiative or through the parliamentary route. NASA could just have ignored it, but they have decided to go that option so that they expose them, for lack of a better word, so that they expose them for what they think they are, and ultimately they'll go back to the Okoa Kenya initiative. Remember, the Okoa Kenya initiative floundered through not so agreeable ways. It may suffer the same fate if NASA's cries about the composition of IBC is still the same, and therefore it may go through again the same fate. Ultimately, we are going to have a situation where this country is facing each other bare knuckles.
Okay.
Should I point? Let me point out something. And you know, the problem that I have, and I'll tell you this with this bill, is that you have a bill that seeks to alienate 7 counties. On what basis? And that's the point at which you should start from. And it is a case of where somebody believes that 2 wrongs can make a right. That you can try and alienate 7 counties which are believed to belong to only one community. While at the same time, in the object and memorandum of the said bill, you are saying that the current administration has, over the period of years, concentrated resources in only Nairobi as a county, and let's say centrally within Nairobi, and has ignored devolution. At the same time, during the rallies and whatever that you've had, NASA has had this campaign or this clarion call that this country has only been governed by 2 communities. Then you go ahead and want to seek to divide now the people and want to only seclude only one entity of the 42 communities that we have, and let it now have its own country, and then marginalize the rest, the other 40, let's say 41, the other 41 communities to form another republic. That's what I'm saying. Right now, what we have is deceptive politics that is being played right now. It is divisive. And at this point, you cannot have a solution, further division as a solution to the current marginalization that we have.
That is true, but we cannot ignore the fact that, like Dr. Alutalala mentions, it has a history. There is where it's coming from.
It has.
We can trash and say that maybe this is something that's going to take us to the dogs, as it were, but we cannot trash the history where it's coming from. And even if it doesn't happen now, it is already a clarion call that this could be something Kenya should be looking to if we do not have this conversation and solve our problems.
Let me say this, and you know the reason why I have this. If this bill had originated, for example, from a county assembly, and people themselves, you've seen, for example, we had governors from Mombasa County, and their members of parliament. They themselves have expressed the need to secede, right? This has been done. And for them, we can say that these are people who intentionally want to secede from the country. You have the likes of Kaluma and his followers who have said, we want to secede. But you haven't seen any member of parliament, for example, from the greater northeastern, former northeastern province, seeking to secede. None of them have expressed the need to secede. You have not seen anybody from any part of lower and upper eastern seeking to secede. But the same Kaluma has included them in that bill that they are seeking to secede. Nobody in Rift Valley has said that they want to secede from the greater country. So what you have right now is people who are trying to create animosity against particular people. They want to show them that of all the 40 counties that we have, the rest are dominated by only one community. And we go back to the reason why we had tribal clashes in 2007. And this was the reason. Despite having been said that election had been rigged, throughout, the campaign by one of the political parties had always been 41 against one community. And we are heading the same route. Somebody wants to take us to the dogs through this secession bill.
Okay.
And the reason, and I can tell you, if indeed we had an honest conversations with ourselves, and I'm saying this, if this bill is subjected to the to all the 47 counties, you will realize that it is a fallacy, that it is only a section of this country that wants to go down, but does not want to go down alone.
All right, Dr. Mohana.
Michael, as I've excused myself already, I would request, with greatest respect to my colleague, let's not discuss the merits and demerits of that motion, because if we do, then we may not guide our viewers properly. Let's try and look at the grievances by whatever description, because the motion to secede, the People's Assemblies, and many others that NASA is doing, they're doing it ostensibly because they feel aggrieved. What are the grounds that they are espousing as being the reasons for this grief that they have? And I say so because, Michael, just look at the immediate cause of all these problems that we have in this country. Electoral malpractices. Haven't we been here before?
We've discussed it.
We have a document, a whole document by Kriegler. Was it looked at? Never looked at. My younger brother here talks about clashes after elections. Didn't we have a document on that? We have. It hasn't been discussed. One of the other very divisive issues that NASA has raised is the issue of land and marginalization. There's a whole Ndungu land report, never implemented, never looked at. And therefore, you get the feeling that our leaders who are either in the opposition or in the government have very strange considerations why they prefer to rubbish all these efforts that we've done to solve problems that we've heard, and each time we go back to the same cycle.
All right, but allow me to interject, Dr. Mohana, and the question here being...
Yes.
Well, they say the devil is in the detail.
Correct.
And yes, there are those grievances. However, when we look at the leaders who are pushing, whether for secession or not, have had an opportunity to address those issues, given the same reports, but did not address them. So the question then that many Kenyans would beg is, why now? What benefit or what difference will it make if we do it now? When they had the opportunity, for instance, to talk about the Ndugu report, we've had the likes of James Orengo, basically handling that docket, but we didn't see much done in regards to the report. So the question is, why now? Is there a detail that maybe as Kenyans we may not see as much as the bigger picture does, let me put it this way, could the politicians be using an opportunity to get another means to get to where they want, as opposed to now the Kenyan himself?
Thank you. Why now? Because they've refused to allow us to move. We are not moving as a nation, Michael. We have moved before. So your question is right. Why now? Because for reasons that they would know best, both sides, they have decided that you're not going to move as a nation. So we are now discussing because we are not moving. And if we don't move, we'll grind to a halt. And this nation will tear asunder.
But the question then being, if we're going to grind to a halt, to whose benefit is that halt?
That is a question that can be answered either by NASA or by Jubilee. As far as I'm concerned, it's not the benefit of this country. Yes. I know to whose benefit it's not.
It's not definitely not to Wanjiku.
It's not to Wanjiku. But to whom it is, that is a question that both sides could answer.
Muregi, do you have an answer as to why now?
You see, and I've said this. You look at the genesis of this secession debate. And the first person who talked about it and who wrote about it extensively in a newspaper article was one David Ndii.
Yes.
And David Ndii is known to be an advisor of Raila Odinga. And the NASA is a member, is a cog, is one of those, what do we call? There's a committee.
Co-advisor.
He's a co-advisor in NASA. So therefore, all along, this has been part of the political ploy by NASA. That if we do not succeed in elections, therefore, the other thing now we need to do is that we have to get an opportunity for us now to govern. And this is the problem that we have as a country. You do not look at these secession talks in isolation. You look at also other other utterances by politicians within NASA. The other day at Jacaranda, I remember they were saying, and Raila himself was saying, that if at all, whether the Supreme Court, whether the Supreme Court affirms the election or not, and if President Uhuru Kenyatta is sworn again, they are going to swear in their own president. Right? You also look at whatever that has been happening, that there has been a need for creation of people's assemblies. So what you realize is that there has been deliberate steps being taken by certain people to create parallel governments. And secession talks, it's part of that. It is not an isolation talk. It is not something, and you ask yourself why. Why do these issues arise every election year? That should be the most important point, because it has nothing to do with the normal Kenyan. It has nothing to do with Wanjiku. It has to do with people who want to ascend to power by any means, including dividing this country, ensuring that they ascend to power. And that's what I'm saying. It becomes an insincere debate for us to always tag along whatever we call historical injustices, which themselves are also questionable. Yeah, we always tag along what we term as historical injustices. Right now, with the creation of the 47 countries, we have an opportunity for those countries to develop by themselves. They have resources. They also have contribution from the national government. But what have you seen? Those county governments have become sources of plunder, regardless of whether...
Devolved corruption.
Yes, they've devolved corruption. And so we as a people have got to a point where we have to ask ourselves the hard questions. What is it in this presidency that people want us to even split so that we can have it?
All right, Dr. Mohana, sometimes it sounds to me like we are sitting lame ducks. And I had an expression one time that my parents would use, and they would say that they feel sorry for the feet that are under the head of a madman, because they will walk through anything. They will be taken through anything. Now, as Kenyans, are we those feet that are under leaders that are seemingly, for want of a better word, crazy to some extent, to where they'll take us through anything, whether it is fire? You know, a madman can walk through fire, can walk through water, can walk through mud. Those feet have no choice but to follow that. Is that where we are as a country?
Well, that's a bit laughable. I'm restraining myself from laughing about it. Laughable is a bit extreme to describe the leaders as mine was taking us through that. But yes, there's a sense in which you get that feeling, Michael, because, look, we have been taken through so much, you know. They've been taken through so much, some of which as citizens we don't understand, but the two sides up there understand. And for information, Michael, these two protagonists know each other very well. And even when they decide to do what they're doing, they know the end game. Not all Wanjikus may know it. Allow me to use an analogy from the family just like you've used. Michael, when you are born in a family and you, by the grace of God, you begin doing well in the family, where I come from, it is always advised that you care about how your brother is doing. Because when you do so well, and you are prosperous, and you are wealthy, and you are able to get the finest things in life, you will never live in peace side by side by your brother. Maybe the mad one, the one with whose feet is on the head of a mad one. Yes. Yeah. So for me, I don't even want to dwell so much on the legalities or illegalities of what is happening. I want to dwell on the human aspect of us Kenyans and brothers. And my younger brother has said it here, that we have interacted so much, we have intermarried so much, that this debate is exposing us to very awkward situations. I have Kikuyus in my family, they have Luyas in their family, and so forth, Luos and so forth. When your brother cries and says that he is uncomfortable and that you are the source of his problems, it may be because you are the first one, so your parents spent most of their energies on you, and therefore you're doing better. You have a moral responsibility to stop and listen and look at possibilities of holding your brother's hand so that he can be somewhere where he can live on his own. If you don't, you'll never live in peace. And you know, some sections of this country, for example, right here in Kiambu here, I'm told, it's not factual, but I'm told, where you go, you find beautiful homes, but their owners don't live there most of the time. Why? Because of insecurity. And this insecurity is because the vast number of their cousins don't have jobs. So the moment you drive your big car into that village, it's like a toll station. Before you get in, you have to pay 50, you have to pay 20, and so forth. The point is this, Michael. All these animosities toward one section of a tribe in this country, as I've said, you'll forgive me again for talking about history, has a history. And the history is this. Michael, if you are the first in time at a point, you'll get to know better, you'll get to do better. That shouldn't criminalize you. What do you have to do as my leading brother is to take the moral responsibility to guide my hand, as I've done. Our Kikuyu brothers have no reason being demonized. Our Kikuyu brothers, by virtue of history, happened to be the first in the capital city when the Mzungu left. They were the first on site. Because of their proximity to Nairobi, they were able to get to advance themselves better and more. Today, if you call an interview, for whatever profession, I can bet that out of 10 candidates who will be there, you'll find one from the Kikuyu extraction. Nothing criminal, nothing corrupt about it. It's simply a historical happening that now, because it is raising so much hatred from others, for lack of a better word again, this needs to be adjusted. Look, Michael, when the girl child was suffering a lot in this country, because the men always believed that they had the right over the female, what did we do as a country? We brought the affirmative action. The affirmative action was a conscious acceptance that whereas people should compete fairly, we need to bring in a bit of unfairness, because that's what the affirmative action does, a bit of unfairness to bring
To include
the girl child up there, up to the level where she feels inclusive. I dare suggest there is a need to have an affirmative action on the distribution of resources in this country, whether you're talking about jobs in government, whether you're talking about opportunities, so that these lamentations about one tribe controlling everything stops. And believe you me, NASA have all the lists, it's just that they don't bring on mainstream. They'll tell you per tribe who occupies this and who occupies this. So we cannot dismiss them. What we have to do is to engage in a genuine dialogue and accept, yes, Michael, my brother, had a head start. He's ahead of me. But that shouldn't criminalize Michael's prosperity. What we should do is Michael should take a moral responsibility and hold my hand so that we reach a level where I may not be like him, but I'm not starving. That analogy in this country will help. We need to stop criminalizing the Kikuyu. They have done nothing wrong in terms of the opportunities they have. They were first on site. They got the opportunities. Michael, when your father was in Nairobi, my father was in upcountry. Some of us of our age is our generation that has come to town. Clearly, I'll not get similar opportunities like you because you arrived here first, you got more knowledge, you got more exposed, and you got more opportunities.
All right.
Look at the schools in Central Province. The Alliance High Schools, the PCAs. They were brought by the colonialists. Why? Because in the White Highlands... Proximity. They were never in Kakamega. So when will a child from Kakamega ever go to Alliance? Even if he does, he'll never catch those who were there first. So I do not like the dishonest dismissal whenever some of these grievances come up. They are genuine. The only problem with those grievances is they tend to criminalize the Kikuyu and other tribes, whatever they are, for what they are. I do not think so. The vast majority of a Kikuyu citizen has worked hard to reach where he or she is.
All right. Murigi,
yes.
Do you agree that there is, because of history, a head start, and this has caused demonizing of a community or communities against others, whereas this should not be the conversation? Then again, there's also the question of moral responsibility.
You know, there's one thing I cannot do personally, and I cannot take moral responsibility on behalf of a community if myself am in a disadvantaged position. And he said, and he's put it so well, that if you go to parts of central Kenya, you'll find that there are a few who are in that bracket, that in the rich bracket. But there is also a vast majority of Kenya, and a big majority of those people who are suffering. And you see, the problem you'll ask yourself is that the poor man who's suffering somewhere in Kiambu and the poor man who's suffering somewhere in Nyalenda, they're all the same. And therefore, you cannot tell one poor person to take the moral high road and decide that I'm going to actually accept to be discriminated because of my virtue of belonging to a community. And that's what I'm saying. Our starting point has always been this, and this, I'm a strong believer in this, that when we enacted the Constitution, we made it so clear that we need to devolve everything to the counties. And that's the reason why you have 47 counties. That is the reason why right now we have Commission on Revenue Allocation. That is the reason why Kiambu as a county does not receive the same amount of money from the national government as Turkana County. Why? Is because that it has to look at so many factors and try to equalize so that you have those funds going to those areas so that they are uplifted. But those are not the dialogues that we are having right now. What we have is principally a dialogue based on presidency. And you see, that's what I'm saying. That this issue is not arising because of anything else. It is arising because of the contestation that we have right now about the presidential election. And it is because we have not moved as a country from the imperial presidency, that mentality of imperial presidency, where you believe that I have, as a commander, and because I have Uhuru as president, that this government is now ours. Whereas
it favors you.
It favors me. Whereas you realize that even in that government, you have so many people who are benefiting, who are not even from the same community. And that is the mentality that we've had. That because by virtue of belonging, you have a right to the said government. But we fail, for example, for myself, I fail to question the dealings that are ongoing in my own constituency at home. I know that funds have been devolved, but I do not see any development. But my concentration and my focus is so much on the presidency because I will belong, I will feel I belong because I have one of my, what do you say, my tribesmen, at the helm there. And that's what I'm saying. Right now, what we should be talking about is how do we strengthen devolution? And that should be the discussion where we go.
Point of focus.
The point of focus. And at the same time, and I always need to address these issues about historical injustices, for example. And so many historical injustices, as he has said, focus on one, the issue of land. And the focus of the issue of land is mainly in two areas. That is in the Rift Valley and in the Coast Province. And we've heard that there have been efforts to ensure that those landless peoples get title deeds to those lands. You no longer hear, unless it is back in 2007, where you have people now raising issues about ownership of certain people invading their areas in the Rift Valley. So you see, those are issues that are no longer with us. But the problem is one, politics. Politics is the devil that we have in the house.
Right.
And everybody wants to use excuses so that they can ascend to power.
Dr. Alutalala, I see you shaking your head. Is that in agreement or disagreement?
Disagreement. My young colleague seems to agree with me in principle, but weavers again to appear to be dismissive of what I've said. You see,
especially the history bit.
Yeah, precisely. And you see, Michael, this age is important sometimes because you've just not read the books. You've lived through that experience. It is true that there are our brothers and sisters among the Kikuyu population who are poor. That I've said it a couple of times. However, you must understand that the very nature of politics in this country, President Uhuru Kenyatta is seen as a representation of his community, so does Ruto, so does Raila. We know that off camera, people have ridiculed Raila and said it's only Luos who are protesting. That's a fact. So let's not dismiss the fact that the leadership in this country is always perceived, and many times it actually attempts to perceive itself that way also, as being representative of their tribe. Number two, I agree when he talks about devolution. Devolution was a wonderful concept. It is still a wonderful concept. On one hand, it is very regrettable that it has turned out to be a devolved corruption. And that is very, very regrettable. If only there will be no devolved corruption, Michael, half of the problems and these lamentations you're saying would be addressed. But the same way roads will be given to relatives, tenders will be given to relatives and friends, it's the same thing that's happened to the vast majority of devolved units. So that is regrettable. However, we must still remember that by the very nature of our Constitution, the presidency is not just that symbolic thing. The presidency is powerful, my friend. And today, as we speak, the executive is still a stumbling block to 100% devolution. Don't we remember how the president and Governor Nanok exchanged in Turkana the other day? What were they quarreling over? Because they share revenue from the resources within Turkana County, there is a specific percentage that ought to go to the residents. The president doesn't want. And to date, that has told. Last time we were here, you remember there was a revelation from one of our guests here who said now there are mafia kind of fellows, the Nigerian style, where people are now stealing oil from those places. There was one guest who said it here. Two, the bulk of the devolved functions are still being torn between devolution and centrality. Education, a major, major function, is not devolved, correct? Health, it's not yet settled. In brief, depending on the presidency, devolution can succeed or fail. For me, Michael, whatever we say, let's be honest with each other as brothers and sisters in this country and look at what your brother is complaining about. This kind of more or less prepared responses every time something comes up is bugging me. What is your brother saying? He's saying your people have more jobs than mine. Stop saying that is dismissive. Don't stop saying that's tribalistic. Can you go to the facts? If the answer is yes, then do what I'm saying.
But
just a moment.
And the problem is one. If you have people,
allow him to finish. Allow him to finish. Carry on, Dr. Mohana.
let me interject. That is okay. Because, the problem is one. I do not believe that people have to be discriminated by virtue of other people's achievements. It is wrong.
You know, that is why I didn't want to allow him to interject, because he always goes off tangent. That I've already conceded. And I have said it's not fair to be criminalizing. Yes, I've already said that. So you need not to spend time on that. Yeah. If there are complaints that one section of the population has more jobs, has more tenders, whatever it is, don't dismiss it. Mm-hmm. Can you go to the facts?
All right, let me pose you, Dr. Mohana, because we need to release KTN home.